Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Finally doing my August wrap up. I'm a little bit late on this one, but I have 6 books to talk about today and I really enjoyed all of them. So I'm super stoked to chat with you all about these. So yeah, before we get into it, I will show what I'm drinking today. And it is a cider from a local cidery in Mesa, Arizona, and it's called Tropic Lightning with fermented apple juice, strawberry, and hibiscus flower. So yeah, this is it. I really like cider core ciders because they're generally more like on the dry side. I don't really like any beverage that's like super sweet, and I find ciders can usually be very cloyingly sweet, which I don't like Angry Orchard, not my thing. But yeah, these are really good and dry. So let's get into the wrap up. So first I have this slim essay collection from Zadie Smith called Intimations, and it's a reflection on COVID and the various implications of the pandemic. And there are 2 topics here that I wanted to mention in this video that I really enjoyed reading about. And the first is Zadie Smith's reflection on art compared to essential labor. And so she basically questions or argues with herself about the value of art in a time when essential labor has never been more clear or necessary. And so it's really interesting to think about, what is the worth of a novel compared to someone that's on the front lines of the pandemic and risking their lives every day? Like, does the novelist also have equal merit to that person? And she battles with this in an essay, which I thought was really intriguing that I hadn't really thought about before. So yeah, I mean, I know like artists sometimes reflect on what is the value of their art, like what is the value of a novel. And I know us book nerds see a very high value in them, but others may not. And so, yeah, love that reflection. Hi. Daddy's filming. And the other topic is she addresses the murder of George Floyd in an essay called Contempt as a Virus. And it basically discusses contempt and racism in the context of like COVID and of it being a virus. And there's 2 passages that I had to share with you all that will hopefully sell you on buying this book. It's $11 and all of the proceeds are going to COVID relief efforts. And so I think it's worth it just because it's a good book, but also because you're supporting a good cause by reading it. And so, yeah, so in this essay, there are 2 passages in which she talks about racism in America. And whenever she mentions like the virus in these quotes, it's basically addressing contempt and racism. And so the first one is, a long-preserved privilege dies hard. A long-preserved isolation, even if it has been forced, is painful to emerge from. But I am talking in hypotheticals. The truth is that not enough carriers of this virus have ever been willing to risk the potential loss of any aspect of their social capital to find out what kind of America might lie on the other side of segregation. They are very happy to black out their social media for a day, to read all Black books, and educate themselves about Black issues, as long as this education does not occur in the form of actual Black children attending their actual schools. Period. And the other one, she says, it is most effectively attacked when many different members of the plague class, that is, all economically exploited people, whatever their race, act in solidarity with each other. It would involve the painful recognition that this virus infects not only individuals but entire power structures, as any Black citizen who has been pinned to the ground by a Black police officer can attest. If our elected representatives have contempt for us, if the forces of so-called law and order likewise hold us in contempt, it's because they think we have no recourse and no power, except for the one force they have long assumed too splintered, too divided, and too forgotten to be of any use, the power of the people. The time has long passed when only one community's work would be required to cure what ails us. I mean, the excellence of those passages, I just can't. Like, her writing is so good. And I loved reading this collection. And this is my first book by Zadie Smith, and I loved it. And I can't wait to read her novels and her other essays. I just think she's incredible, clearly. In being able to reflect so deeply and critically on something that's recent and ongoing is just brilliant. And I can't wait to see if she writes more about this when or if the pandemic ever ends. So I highly recommend this one. It's so good. Okay, next, I finally finished Ottessa Moshfegh's short story collection called Homesick for Another World. And I loved every single story in this collection. There's 14 total. And, I'm like the resident Ottessa Moshfegh stan on BookTube, it feels like. I know there's many of us out there. But I just really love her writing style. It's very sharp and simple and concise and dark and witty.
Incredible, amazing, show-stopping, spectacular, never the same, totally unique, completely not ever been done before, unafraid to reference or not reference, put it in a blender, shit on it, vomit on it, eat it, give birth to it.
And it's a great effect, and it's also just really beautiful at the same time. I feel like every single sentence in her novels and her short stories, but particularly here because how she has a limited, page count for these short stories and having to keep them as concise as possible. I just feel like every single line and thought is measured so well. And what I love most about Moshfegh's work, I think, is that she looks at people who might be considered unlikable in society. And that might be for good reason or not, but she looks at their perspective on the world to highlight something about it. And it's usually something bad or dirty or something. I just think it's just a really interesting way of examining people that we might not always see at the forefront of literature, and people who think thoughts that are considered gross or abnormal, but what she kind of gets to the point of in her stories and her novels is that most of us are having these same thoughts, and most of us are feeling this annoyance with the world and how terrible many aspects of it are. And so I think while I know she gets some criticism for being a quite bleak writer and like writing about gross things, but she does it, I think, intentionally and to great effect. And I just love that she just goes there. She has no filter with her work. And I think that's why she is my favorite author. I think she is just excellent in everything that she does. And I can't wait to see what she writes next, because I'm just so eager to read more from her. I'm kind of bummed because I only have one more piece of work from her that I haven't read, and that's her novella McGlue, and then I'll have read all of her published work. And while it's exciting, I'm also bummed. So I highly recommend it, especially if you like short story collections. This is excellent, so good. I can sing Moshfegh's praises all day. Okay, so next I read The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. And this one is a super fun and heartwarming, lighthearted read. It follows this guy who lives in this world where magical children are known. These magical children live in orphanages, and he works for this government agency that oversees magical children. And so he visits these orphanages and kind of audits them and makes sure that the children are being treated well. And he gets assigned to this special task for this orphanage that has very, extremely magical children. And the main character, he's very lonely, and he just lives with his cat, and he lives in the city where it's always very bleak, and he's very by the book, goes to work, goes home, sleeps, goes back, and he just lives this very bleak existence by himself. And basically the novel follows him find a family through this project or this assignment. And it was just so cute. There's a couple times where I teared up, and there's a lot of funny passages. It's just such a good time. It almost feels like a YA novel, but it's not pitched like that. But I think it's accessible for all audiences. I think it would be a great film. It's just so cute. And so if you're looking for something that's super easy to read and just a good time and will make you maybe cry, and there's some queer representation here, which is awesome. So I think it's such a fun read, and you can't really go wrong with this one. Okay, next, I finally tried out Ali Smith. I started with Autumn, the first in her seasonal quartet, and I really enjoyed it. I was a bit worried because I had seen some friends on here, had recently read one of her books, How to Be Both, and they did not like it, and so I was a bit worried that her work might be a little bit too experimental for me. However, I do think Autumn, it's the only book I've read by her, but it was a good introduction to her style. I can definitely see how she can get even more experimental in other books, and I might not like it as much as I did here. But this book follows this guy named Daniel. He's 100 years old, 101 years old, and this woman named Elizabeth, and this is set in 2016 post-Brexit, and so this is considered the first post-Brexit novel. And while it does touch on that, I think a lot of this book has to do with time, thought experiment about time and what time means, and when things happen to us, what does that mean for the future and the past and the present, and how they all kind of combine in her book. I don't know if that makes any sense, but more so than this being a character-driven book or a plot-driven book, it's just a ton of thoughts, and it's all centered in Autumn, and it definitely gives you a fall vibe. I like what she's doing here with using seasons to address certain topics that kind of fit with them, and I just thought it was such a beautiful book. And she writes with this really lyrical, poetic prose that I liked. Sometimes it got a little bit away from me, but that's not Ali Smith's fault. I think it was, what I really liked was after finishing this book, there were some elements and some allusions that I didn't fully understand, But I went on BookTube and watched some reviews of people that loved this one, and I got so much more out of it by hearing what they had to say and things that they picked up on that I didn't, like some ties to some other books and stuff, which I thought was really cool, and some ideas that she addresses that I didn't fully think through while reading it. And so, yeah, I think this is a great book for discussion. I can't wait to read the other 3 books in the quartet. I just ordered them all. Yeah, I really liked it. If you're looking for like a literary, thought-provoking, just really interesting, somewhat experimental read, I think this is your book. I really liked it, so yeah. Next, I have 2 spookier books. The first one being Sisters by Daisy Johnson. This one just released like a week or 2 ago, and it's a psychological thriller that follows these 2 sisters named July and September, and they have just moved to this kind of like out-of-town, kind of creepy, dilapidated house with their mother, and you don't really know the full reason why they moved, but it relates to September, the older sister. She did something at school to some other girls, and it's not really clear what she did. And so you follow these 2 sisters and begin to learn their dynamic, and you see how September is very controlling over July, and you are wondering, why is she behaving this way, and why does this house seem so haunted? Like, everything just seems weird and kind of off. And the mom is just secluded. She's very upset by what happened that caused them to move, and she's upset with the children. And so, yeah, it was just super intriguing, and it was a really good mystery. And what I really liked about this book that I was surprised by is, if you know my take on thrillers, I hate tropes involving, like, I hate certain thriller tropes, and 2 of those that I really do not like are unreliable narrator and a narrator that doesn't remember the past and eventually like remembers what happened that's causing everything that's happening currently. And those are both used in this book, but I think Daisy Johnson actually does it well, and it's rare. I'm getting like Major Gillian Flynn vibes, because I think she does thrillers in the way that I like them. And while this isn't the most, like, I guess, original story, I think there are certain things she does so well. Like, she talks a lot about bodies being houses, and you learn why near the end of the novel. And she has really great writing throughout. It's a little bit experimental as well, and super creepy, and there's some really unnerving scenes throughout this. And I just loved it. It was so like what I look for in a thriller. Yeah, I loved it. If you're looking for something kind of spooky, a character study of some messed up people, this is your book for sure. Finally, I read Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Cesare, and this isn't usually what I've been reading lately. This is a teen slasher, which is not like my general thing. I do love like slasher movies. Like Scream is my favorite movie of all time, but I don't really read any like YA horror. But I don't think that this is YA beyond it just having teenagers in it. Like, it's not juvenile in any sense. This book is crazy gory. It follows this teenager named Quinn. Her mom recently died, and she moves to this like in the middle of nowhere town to kind of get away from their past. And in this town, the town factory recently closed, and their like town mascot of sorts is this clown named Friendo. So we already know it's gonna be crazy. And so there's a serial killer that starts picking off teenagers in this town, and then the book opens up from there, and things get way crazier than that. And I won't go into any more of it, but just know that it's very action-packed once the actual action starts happening. And it was just such a fun time. I love slashers, and this was like a perfect read for me right now as, you know, fall is approaching. It was just so fun. Some good twists in here, a little bit of social commentary. I think it gets kind of unbelievable near the end, but I think if you just put that aside and enjoy this for what it is, you'll have a fun time with it. Yeah, so if you're looking for a slasher, something a little spooky, gory, action-packed, this is your book for sure. It's also being adapted into a film, I believe, and I can totally see why. It's quite original, so yeah, definitely pick this one up if that's your jam at all. So yeah, that about does it for August. I really liked all the books I read this month, and as always, if you pick one up, I really hope you enjoy it. I hate when I recommend books and someone doesn't like them, so I'm sorry in advance if you don't, but I hope you do. So I think that's all I have to say about these ones, but yeah, until next time, cheers.